With videos for applique, I always struggle. It's a chicken and an egg issue. Do I show you how to sew it out first so you understand why it's set up the way that it is, or do I show you how to set it up so you understand why the machine stops? So I would recommend watching both the color sequence and the sewing, and then in either order, but then watching it again so one makes the other make a little bit more sense. I'm going to start off by kind of having things appear in Design Shop as if I was sewing them. So I know this is how to run the machine, but seeing it in Design Shop I think makes everything else make a little bit more sense. And then we'll set up the color sequence in the OS, and then in another video we'll watch it sew out. So on screen I have in Design Shop the applique design that we are going to set up the color sequence for and sew. I have it with a vector element to act as the fabric that we're going to put down. And then I have each separate element over on the side. So I'm going to make all of these go away. I'm just going to hide them. And then the first thing that I'm going to show is the first color. So I have these broken out by colors. And the first thing that sews typically with an applique is a locator stitch. And that locator stitch is just the outline of the material that you're going to be laying down. That way you know where to put it on your fabric. So typically after that, in between these two colors, and it's very important that you have the locator and what is considered a tack down stitch, where it goes around the outside and attaches the material. That's the next bit that sews down. It's very important that those are separate colors. That way when you go to the machine you can put in an applique command that will make the machine wait for you. So it'll stop, feed the frame out, and wait for you so you can place that material down. So first is the locator stitch, then I would lay the material down, and I'm just showing the vector to essentially lay material down. And then we sew the tack down stitch, and there are different styles of tack down stitches. This one is a tackle stitch. This would be kind of a common look to end here if it was on the back of a jersey or something like that. It's a tackle twill kind of look. If you want a more finished look, you can follow that up with a satin stitch. Now personally, I typically make the tack down stitch and the cover stitch separate colors as well. What that allows me to do is put another applique stop in there so it'll feed the frame out and I can see, did everything line up the way that it should have, or do I need to adjust something? Is there a little bit of applique sticking out here that I need to trim out before sewing my cover stitch? And typically a cover stitch is a nice satin stitch like this. With applique you have a lot of options. You can change the material that you're using, you can change the style of tack down stitch that you're using, you can change the color of threads that you're using, and you can achieve a lot of different looks, but the basic structure is the same. You start with a locator stitch, you lay down your material, and then you apply a tack down stitch. In my software I have that design loaded, but let's go in and set the color sequence. So to start, I've got that locator stitch. I'm going to sew that in a red. I'm going to be using red material to lay that down. But it also shows up on camera a little bit better for me than if I were to do it in the color of the fabric. If I was just doing a tack down stitch and I'm not following it up with a cover, I may choose to do it in the color of the fabric. That way it kind of hides that locator stitch a little bit. Next, I'm going to choose the color of my tack down. I'm going to do that in a black, and I'm going to do the cover stitch in the same color as my tack down. If I were to sew this right now, it would just sew locator, tack down, cover. What I would really like to do is drag one of these applique commands in between the locator and the tack down. That way it'll feed the frame out and wait for me. I'm going to do the same thing between the tack down and the cover. What that allows me to do is when the tack down is there, I can double check it, make sure everything is right, and then I can press the green button on the machine and it will start sewing again and it will sew that cover stitch. So no matter where an applique falls in your design, this is the basic structure for it. Locator, applique command, tack down, and then this is an optional command for you. Some people don't have these be different colors. They don't have the tack down and the cover stitch in separate color blocks. They just go right from one to the other, and that's fine. I'm just a little nervous, so I like to have them as separate. That way I can double check it with another applique command. So I'm going to confirm out of here. And now my design is set up, its color sequence is set up, the applique commands are in there, and I am ready to sew my design.